You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thank you for joining me here on our Total Wellness Tuesday, where we're going to be chatting about the one winter supplement you can't live without. And I know that sounds like a pretty intense title right there, but the bottom line is this is actually the truth, that there is no hype around this whatsoever. And then if you're missing this particular nutritional supplement, and it is a vitamin, but it's a vitamin that acts as a hormone, you are going to substantially decrease your immunity, decrease your body's ability to fight disease in general, decrease your body's ability to regenerate brain cells, and also lower the overall strength of not only your muscles, but your bones. And so the supplement that I'm talking about is none other than vitamin D. Now, maybe you've heard of vitamin D in the past, but you probably heard about it from the standpoint that, well, we take it as a child, or we need it growing up because we don't want to get rickets, which again, no one's really going to get rickets in a lot of industrialized nations because we eat a lot of processed foods. We eat a lot of enriched foods, and that's never talked about. Enriched foods contain a form of vitamin D, and thus contain vitamin D2. Now, this is a very synthetic form. It's not as well utilized by the body. We're not going to get into that today because we're simply going to give you the right vitamin, which is vitamin D3. So that's bottom line, you're going to be using vitamin D3, but I'm going to give you food sources. I'm going to give you nutritional supplement sources, and I'm going to tell you exactly how to find out if you're deficient in it. So super important. And here's why. Yes, you get rickets if your vitamin D gets too low. You could also get, though, osteoporosis. A lot of people know about it for osteoporosis, especially a lot of women. Now, the other thing, though, is as a child growing up, you can get something called osteomalacia. And the difference with that is it's actually deformed bones or malformed bones, and they didn't shape the right way. And the reason is you're deficient in vitamin D. So it's very, very interesting because, there's a lot of MDs out there. And again, they haven't taken a single class of nutrition before in their life, never mind supplements, which isn't even covered in medical school, but really neither is nutrition as well. They get one course at best. And a lot of registered dietitians, again, they don't study nutritional supplements. So here's the bottom line, is that every nutritional supplement, meaning like the core vitamins, the core minerals, all of those things have all been studied, proven to work, and shown why our body needs them. And so, when I was studying for naturopathy, my doctoral naturopathy, and when I took my board exam, the amount of data that I needed to study on nutritional supplements was profound. And I'm very, very happy and glad that I got that experience. But not just to study what's in this supplement, what's that in that supplement. I actually went deep into the biochemistry of nutritional supplements. So that allowed me to understand why, it's laughable when an MD or anybody says like, oh, well, there's no science that vitamins work. First of all, it's completely insane because our bodies literally run on vitamins and minerals and the electrolyte mineral family to help with every operation. It'd be like saying like, oh, your body doesn't need protein, or it doesn't need any fat, or it doesn't need any carbohydrates. Like, all of those statements are literally ludicrous. And anyone who says that to you, you just know that their depth of knowledge has stopped there. Now, they could be the very best specialist in the world in terms of acute-based care, no doubt about it. They could be the very best heart surgeon or brain surgeon or neurologist, anyone in the world. But I'll tell you what, they don't know anything about nutritional supplements, and that's too bad. Because we're finding out right now that vitamin D, just vitamin D alone, controls about 8% of our genetics and genome. So when people say like, oh, I have really bad genetics, I can relate to that. My genetics are not the greatest hand to be dealt in the world. We'll just put it that way. But I understand that my lifestyle and my nutrition play the largest factor in whether those genes are going to go bad. Basically, they're going to flip a switch to create inflammation, and then dis-ease will happen within my body. Or I can give my body exactly what it needs at the dosage that it needs, and then I can let my body heal and regenerate and rejuvenate. And that's what we try to do here in the Cabral concept. But really what we're talking about is how do we utilize vitamin D in our daily life so that we don't suffer the consequences of the disease, the dementia. And now they're finding really direct correlations right now, literally direct correlations with 2,000 genes in our body. 2,000 genes vitamin D helps with. Now, we thought magnesium was pretty important, right? Magnesium is over 300 different enzymatic transformations in the body. So we thought, again, that's really important, right? But vitamin D almost takes the cake because of how it acts in the body as a vitamin, as a hormone. Really, really important. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, which is a little bit different as well. So here's the thing. I want you to know that right now, vitamin D, if you are deficient in it, you are not able to uptake the calcium, the phosphorus that you need to boost your immune system and also build up that bone. When your immune system isn't as bolstered as it should be, it's going to leave you more susceptible to thyroid-based disease, whether it's Hashimoto's. We've got cardiovascular disease. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Dementia, autoimmune disease they're finding, type 1 diabetes, cancer, multiple sclerosis. This is a really important subject. And the reason why I'm kind of harping on it so much today is that it's so easy to correct. That's the really nice thing about us being in 2000 and now almost 2018, right? End of 2017, is the bottom line is we know so much about nutrition and how it can help our body to stay healthy and live longer and really maintain an ideal weight. Because if you've listened to my previous weight loss and wellness Wednesday shows, you know that vitamin D controls so much of the hormone process. And of course, if it affects the thyroid, then of course it's going to affect your weight as well. So super important how we understand that the entire body works as one unit, one holistic system. So if your vitamin D is low, well, then as you just heard me say, your calcium isn't going to work properly. Your phosphorus channels aren't going to work properly. Your immune system, your body's even ability to regulate white blood cells is not going to be proper. So you have to look at a nutritional level no matter what disease you're suffering from, and that includes cancer as well. So, I mean, how can people really become vitamin D deficient? Well, one of the biggest ways is really after around October above Atlanta, Georgia. So if you're above that Atlanta, Georgia line, anything north of that, or if you have a winter time, essentially, this is the easiest way to put it. If you go outside in your bathing suit, no matter what month of the year it is, so again, you could live in a different climate than we are here in Boston, and it's November. So if you go outside and you can't get a tan, then you can't get vitamin D. It's the easiest way for me to explain this. You don't need to know the day of the month to start taking vitamin D or not. If you go outside and you don't get a tan, you can't get enough vitamin D. Even if it's the summertime, this is really, really important to explain. You are still vitamin D deficient most likely in the summer. And I only realized this about 7 years ago when I started testing people for vitamin D regularly. I would test them twice a year. I still do that in my practice. I'll share with you that in a moment. But I test with people twice a year in my practice. And the reason I do that is that in the summertime, people are still deficient. And they say, oh, well, how could you be deficient in the summertime when you can get a tan? Well, most people in the summertime don't get a tan. And if they do, they're only getting a tan on Saturdays and Sundays when they might be able to get to the beach. And then when they're walking around the rest of the time, they have a tan face and maybe like a tan forearm, but that's it. The rest of their body, which is the majority of their skin, has never seen that sun. And so their vitamin D levels will still be deficient. So that's really, really important. A lot of people just spend, most of their time inside. And if you're going to spend most of your time inside, you're not going to get the proper UV light right through your windows. You're not going to be able to get a tan. So again, that's really important. The other thing, a lot of people wear an SPF. So even in the summertime, put SPF on their face. They lather their kids in SPF all day long. Little do they know, and this is really too bad, but little do they know that they're putting on SPF so that their child doesn't get a burn or their child or themselves don't get skin cancer. But the truth is that by putting on SPF, you're literally loading cancer-causing carcinogens onto your skin, which get absorbed directly into your bloodstream. I've spoken about this before. It's the biggest farce right now in sunscreen and dermatology and conventional medicine. It's absolutely ridiculous. Again, you don't ever have to trust me. You could do a simple search in this. Sunscreen and cancer. Sunscreen causes cancer. Any one of these things. It's not hard to understand when you look at the ingredients, and this is going to be in my upcoming book, which hopefully will be out soon. But here's the bottom line. You can't put cancer-causing ingredients in a product and then rub it on your body or put it in your mouth and have it go into your bloodstream and say that, well, outside of the package, it can't cause cancer. But if I put it in my body, well, it can't cause cancer then either. Like, oh, it's totally different. No. Like, these things have been proven by conventional medicine. So again, forget about naturopathy. For the most part, I'm talking about conventional medicine always. I'm just looking at it from a naturopathic perspective. I mean, I look from a true research, science-based perspective. You'll never hear me talk about things that aren't scientifically proven. And if I do, I always say there's enough anecdotal data that I don't want to wait for the science to come out. Like, meaning like, we're good on this. We know it works from a clinical perspective. But I'm talking about today. I'm talking about right now, knowing that these SPF sunscreens, and I've talked about, again, just search sunscreen in my podcast. Go to stephencabral.com/podcast, and I give you non-toxic ones. I don't sell sunscreen. I have nothing to gain from this. I want you to get the same sunscreen that my kids would be using, or I might be using if I'm out in the sun for the whole day. For all of today's show notes, simply go to stephencabral.com/641. Okay, let's move on. So, because I could go on that sunscreen tangent literally all day, and I want to give you the information that you need. So another thing that people are unaware of, but the darker your skin, the more vitamin D you need, the more sun you need. So that's why saying 15 minutes of the sun is safe is, again, it's absolutely ridiculous. So let's just say you are Irish or Scandinavian descent and you have light eyes, you have light hair, your skin's very, very pale. And if you go out in the sun, you might get red in 15 minutes. Like for you, you might only be able to get 10 minutes. Who knows? It's based on the person. And then let's just say you have African descent. Now, okay, so you go out in the sun, obviously nothing's going to happen in 15 minutes, right? You most likely need 4 to 6 hours in the sun. That's what no one tells you. Like when we move away from our ancestors may have been, everything changes. It actually changes our genetics. And so for myself, where I have like European descent and Portuguese and Italian and there's French Canadian, there's so many different things going on. I'm mainly just call myself Portuguese and Italian because I'm like 10 different nationalities. And that's why I don't put too much a lot of people at stake in nationalities and heritage and all that, which I think is great. Like I think customs are great and I think heritage is beautiful and all of those things. But I think acceptance is probably better. I really think that that's just a much nicer way to live. And maybe it's just me because I have so many different nationalities rolled into one. But I just think that there's so much beauty in every nationality and every culture that everyone, can be accepted as well. But again, let me get back on topic here. So what can we do about this? Meaning like if we know vitamin D, when it gets low, it could cause, at its worst, rickets, osteoporosis, osteomalacia, those types of things in the young, and then osteoporosis maybe when you're older, but also could lead to cancer without you even knowing it. Type 2 diabetes, all autoimmune diseases, multiple sclerosis, Hashimoto's, rheumatoid arthritis, you name it. So really, really important to look into that. And then again, cancer. 1 in 2 people by the year 2030 will have cancer. 50% of all people. It's completely insane. Like we have to start doing everything we can now to protect ourselves. Really, really important. So here's the thing. I can relate to this whole topic from a really personal perspective. When I was 17 years old, 18 years old, super, super sick, that was when everything started. My cholesterol was through the roof. I mean, it was terrible. But my vitamin D was a 13 at one point and an 18. And it's supposed to be between 50 and 70 nanograms per milliliter. That's what your vitamin D is supposed to be, okay? My cholesterol off the chart. So at 18, 17, they didn't want to put me on a statin. They probably would today, which is, again, completely insane. But what I did was I looked into it and I said, okay, how can I fix my cholesterol? It took me a little while to figure this out. Again, I had to venture now into naturopathic medicine, but I changed my nutrition. I changed my supplementation. I changed my exercise, and I started adding in vitamin D because I saw the correlation by taking vitamin D3 and the high homocysteine that I had, the high CRP I had, and the high cholesterol. I was an inflamed mess. And part of the way to fix that was to cut down on my inflammatory foods. That's when I got deep into nutrition. Before I even became a personal trainer in college, I studied nutrition deep at 17 years old, 18 years old. I just went to the library, literally started checking out every book they had. I'm no exaggeration, Medford, Massachusetts, checking out every book on nutrition that they had. And that obviously, then when I went to undergrad, it allowed me an even more profound wealth of books at the school library as well. Because again, I can understand if you can't buy a lot of books, but there's still libraries around and you can still research right there. So I'm going to give you a few foods that are very, very high in vitamin D3. And then I want to tell you how to test, what supplements you can use if you choose to, and just make sure that you're within this very, very important level. Now, again, the lab range, which I'll get to in a moment, is going to be 30 to 100. That is not the range you should be in. I'll give you that in a moment. So salmon, wild salmon, of course, sardines, egg yolks, shrimp, all very, very high natural foods in vitamin D. Now, you can get it from yogurt, you can get it from cereal, you can get it from milk, and you can get it from orange juice. But the problem is that's a synthetic source. Those are enriched foods. So please don't fall for anyone's scenario or marketing saying like, oh, you can get vitamin D from, cereal. It's vitamin D2, it's synthetic. Even in almond milk for the most part, or nut milk, so they're putting in vitamin D2. Can't recommend that source. A touch is, I don't think it's going to be the worst thing for you, but I want you to get your real dosage from actual vitamin D3. And of course, if you're not in an area where you can get it from the sun, well, we're going to use nutritional supplementation because remember, the human body probably wasn't meant to live in the snow. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say, if you were living outside without heat, without a home, without a roof over your head, and you were naked just like any other animal out there, but if you're out there in the cold with just you and the snow, trust me, you are not surviving. You're just not. There's no real chance. So whether things were different, a million years ago or not, who knows? We'll leave that up for interpretation. Even if you believe that the humans were around a million years ago, again, that's a whole different subject for another day. But here's what I have to say right now is I can tell you for sure, we were probably meant to live in warmer climates, eat more of the natural produce that was around there. But again, we can't look at that from a modern day perspective because right now I'm in New England, in Boston, Massachusetts, where it's cold. It's already down in the low 50s. It's already 40 degrees at night. And as they say, winter is definitely coming. We're going to get lots of snow predicted this winter. And we're certainly not able to get a tan for sure. So here's what I do. I'm going to give you the exact things that I do for my private wellness clients right now. We do an annual blood lab review every single year, typically towards the end of the year or beginning of the year. We use Life Extension. I'm just going to link up the male one and the female one up there. Again, you don't run that through my clinical practice. You can just purchase it online. They'll ship the kit to you. You have a phlebotomist come to you, or you can go to a local walk-in clinic or hospital and they'll probably be able to do a blood draw for you. That's what we do. I personally do this myself. Again, you're always getting the recommendations that I do for myself. Okay. The other thing that you can do is simply run a vitamin D test all on its own. And that is something that we can ship you for very, very inexpensive cost. And it's literally you poke your finger, you just do a little lancet at home, just a little blood drop. That's all you need. You put it on the card and you can mail it in. You can do it for yourself. You can do it for your kids, your whole family, and it works great. So those are the two lab tests that you can do. And then if you're low, well, then you're going to take your vitamin D supplementation. I will give you my specific recommendation based on your lab results. And then after that, what I would do is take the vitamin D for 60 days, anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks, and then retest. So if you don't want to run the lab test because you just say, you know what, I just can't lab test, I can't afford it, whatever it might be, I completely understand. But your PCP might also be able to run a vitamin D test for you. And if you can, take advantage of that. I mean, if you can do it, great. And the other thing is you could just take vitamin D3 supplementation. Now, at that, you would take about 35 IUs per pound of body weight. Now, what does that equate to for easy math? Well, for the most part, adults are going to be around 4,000 IUs per day. Larger adults, about 5,000 IUs per day. Really, really simple. You can get that in 1 or 2 capsules from most reputable functional medicine companies. We'll add the link today. Again, just go to stephencabral.com/641. That will have all of the links right there. And then for children, my kids they get 800 IUs every day, and the droplets can come anywhere between 400 and 800 IUs per day, international units. And again, you can just base that on the child's body weight. You can do the same exact thing, meaning if your child's 20 pounds, they're going to take somewhere around 600, 700 IUs per day. Really, really simple. So my kids do that through the wintertime, and then they always have a tan during the summer. So we're not really using it during the summer unless they were to get a cold. So here's what I personally do. I always like to give you my personal recommendations. I personally take 2 drops. So I take 4,000 IUs through the wintertime. And then I get another 400 IUs from my daily nutritional support shake. So if I do 2 shakes a day, then I get 800 because it's 400 IUs per shake. So really, really simple. That gives me anywhere between 4,000 and 4,800 IUs per day in the wintertime. In the summertime, I drop down to 2,000 IUs per day plus my shake because I'm usually only getting sun 2 days a week, usually maybe 3 days. And then when I'm on vacation for a week, whether it's in the summertime or I usually go away for a week or so in March, I will also not take vitamin D except for my shake because I do travel with my shake. So I'll be at the beach and I'll be getting sun on a daily basis. So I know that I'm getting my vitamin D covered for that day. So hopefully that makes sense. So what do I do and what do my private wellness clients do? We test every year. And if any of the levels were off, well, then we'll run another whole full blood test, or we'll just do the vitamin D3 in December or January, see where we're at. Then we'll supplement according to that. If someone's already between 50 and 70 nanograms per milliliter, then they're perfect. We know the exact dosage for them. So we just have them stay in that dosage. Let's say they were in 85 nanograms per milliliter. Well, then I'll move them down 1,000 or 2,000 IUs. And if they're down below 50, if they're somewhere around the 30s or 40s, well, then I'll bump them up another 2,000 IUs. And that's exactly how you're supposed to use functional medicine, because functional medicine is able to allow you now to test instead of guess and personalize everything that you need to know in order to live the healthiest life and the longest life that you possibly can. And all you're trying to do is set yourself up for success. So just like the 18-year-old me who had cholesterol that was way too high and inflammation, the arteries and all of that, I was able to do proper nutrition, exercise, supplementation, and now my cholesterol is at a nice, healthy 185 milligrams per deciliter, really, really healthy level. And I have my homocysteine levels down, my CRP levels down, and things are good, but I keep testing so that if anything's ever off, well, then I can take care of it right when it happens instead of going a year or 2 years where the damage starts to accumulate. Hopefully this helped. I never thought I would talk this long on vitamin D, but I'm telling you right now, it's that important. So you're either going to test right now or you're going to start supplementing with vitamin D for you and your family. That is the absolute best way to do it. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Cabral Concept. Please do feel free to share this show with anyone it could help. Before you go, I wanted to share a personal story with you. The real reason I began to get well finally is because I figured out what was wrong with me. And that might seem pretty obvious, but I went from doctor to doctor for over 2 years before discovering at-home functional medicine lab testing. These are the labs that enabled me to finally figure out what was wrong with my hormones, blood sugar, electrolytes, and gut health. And once I knew what was wrong, I could then follow a proven plan in order to rebalance my body from the inside out. This is why I believe so strongly in functional medicine lab testing and why I've made it my mission to share these labs with the world. Now at equa.life, you can order an at-home lab test or lab bundle for you and your family and be able to complete it within the week. Plus, the EquaLife difference is that you're not left to try to read and figure out these labs on your own. We explain what your lab numbers mean, what they mean in the much bigger picture, and then how to go about rebalancing your body in order to heal. To see our full selection of lab tests or to set up a free lab selection call to find out what labs may be best for you, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. And do remember, we ship these all over the world. To find out more and to set up your free lab selection call, simply head on over to equa.life/labs. That's EQUI.LIFE/labs.